Welcome to Nightmare Fuel Stories. The signal keeper. The first time I heard the transmission, I was 3 weeks into my 6-month rotation at Weather Station 61, perched on the edge of the Arctic Circle. The facility had been decommissioned 5 years ago, but budget cuts meant the equipment remained, and the government needed someone to ensure it wasn't vandalized or stolen. That someone was me, Marcus Wheeler, ex-meteorologist with a drinking problem and a divorce that left me with nothing but debt and regret. "It's a glorified security job," my supervisor had said during the briefing. "Check the perimeter twice daily, report any suspicious activity, and make sure all systems remain powered down." Simple. What he didn't mention was the isolation. The nearest town was 87 miles south, and my only company was the howling wind that never seemed to stop. The station itself was a concrete monstrosity built in the 1970s, 3 interconnected buildings housing dormitories, a mess hall, research labs, and the monitoring center, where weather patterns across the northern hemisphere had once been tracked. The first anomaly occurred on a Tuesday. I remember because I'd been marking off days on my calendar, a pathetic ritual that only emphasized how much time remained in my sentence. The power was strictly rationed, just enough for basic heating, my living quarters, and the security systems. The weather monitoring equipment was supposed to remain dormant, its massive array of sensors, computers, and communication devices shut down permanently. I was making my evening rounds when I heard it, a soft, rhythmic beeping coming from the monitoring center. I froze, my flashlight beam trembling slightly as I pushed open the heavy metal door. The room should have been dark, silent, dead. Instead, a single monitor glowed with a pale blue light, and the ancient printer beside it was spitting out a continuous stream of paper. The readout made no sense. Atmospheric pressure readings, temperature gradients, wind velocity measurements, all normal functions of a weather station, except Station 61 wasn't supposed to be functioning at all. I approached the console, my boots echoing on the concrete floor. The equipment was running despite being disconnected from power. I checked the cables, all unplugged. I examined the circuit breakers, all switched off. Yet the machine hummed with life and the data continued to print. I shut it down manually, holding the power button until the screen went dark. The silence that followed felt heavier than before, as if the room itself was holding its breath. I gathered the printouts, intending to report the malfunction in my daily check-in. That night, I dreamed of numbers and coordinates scrolling endlessly, like the Matrix code, but with a purpose I couldn't grasp. I woke at 3:17 a.m. to the same beeping sound, now coming through the intercom system that connected all parts of the facility. The monitoring center was fully operational when I arrived, every screen illuminated, every system online. The main display showed a weather pattern I'd never seen before, a massive, perfectly circular formation over the Arctic Ocean, like an eye staring upward into space, or perhaps downward at us. I shut everything down again, this time disconnecting the backup batteries I hadn't even known existed. I called my supervisor on the satellite phone. "Wheeler, do you know what time it is?" he grumbled. "The equipment is turning itself on," I said. "All of it, the monitoring systems, the communications array, everything." A long pause. "That's impossible. The power grid to those systems was physically cut." "Well, they're running. And they're tracking something unusual. It's probably just residual power in the capacitors," he said dismissively. "Or maybe the northern lights are interfering with the sensors. Shut it down and forget about it." I did shut it down. Twice, then shut it down again. "Look, Wheeler, we hired you because you know enough about the equipment to make sure it stays off. So make sure it stays off." He hung up. I returned to the monitoring center with a toolbox and physically removed critical components from the main servers, placing them in a locked cabinet in my quarters. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. The next morning the equipment was running again, the missing components somehow restored or bypassed. The circular pattern had grown larger, and now the printer was producing something new, coordinates, the same set over and over. 79 degrees N, 103 degrees W, a location in the Arctic Ocean, about 300 miles northwest of the station. I spent the day researching those coordinates using the limited internet access I had for personal use. There was nothing there, just ice, water, and more ice. No ships were reported in the area, no research stations, nothing that would explain why our equipment was so fixated on that spot. That night, I heard voices through the intercom. Fragments of conversations, technical jargon about atmospheric conditions, occasional bursts of static. The voices sounded distant, as if coming through layers of interference, but one phrase repeated clearly: "It's opening again." God help us, it's opening again. I wasn't a religious man, but I found myself making the sign of the cross, a gesture I hadn't performed since childhood. The temperature in the station dropped suddenly, my breath fogging in the air despite the heating system running at full capacity. The next day, I disabled the intercom system completely, ripping out wires and removing speaker components. I told myself it was just faulty wiring causing feedback from old radio transmissions. Weather stations like this one had monitored Soviet activities during the Cold War. Perhaps these were just echoes from that era. But that night, the voices came directly from the monitoring center. I barricaded my door and tried to drown them out with music, but my curiosity eventually overcame my fear. Armed with a crowbar I'd found in the maintenance closet, I made my way to the monitoring center. The voices grew louder as I approached, multiple speakers overlapping in urgent tones. I paused at the door, listening. "The readings can't be right," one voice insisted. "Nothing natural creates that kind of pattern. Natural or not, it's growing," another responded. "At this rate, it'll reach critical mass in 72 hours. Has Moscow responded to our alert? All communications are being blocked. It's like something's interfering with the signal. Or someone doesn't want this getting out." I pushed open the door. The voices stopped instantly. The room was empty, but all systems were operational, screens filled with data and that same circular pattern, now pulsing with an inner light that seemed to ripple outward from the center. The main screen had changed to a countdown, 71:43 and 22 seconds, and descending. I approached the console, my hands trembling as I began the shutdown sequence again. As the screens went dark one by one, I noticed something I'd missed before, a small camera mounted above the main display, its lens tracking my movements. That camera hadn't been there yesterday. I smashed it with the crowbar, then methodically destroyed every piece of equipment in the room, working until I was sweating despite the cold. When I finished, the monitoring center was a graveyard of shattered screens and mangled electronics. Exhausted, I returned to my quarters and collapsed into a dreamless sleep. I awoke to the sound of helicopter rotors. Daylight streamed through my window, and for a moment I felt a surge of relief. Someone had come to relieve me, to take me away from this place. I rushed outside without even grabbing my coat. The helicopter bore no markings, just a glossy black exterior that absorbed the sunlight. It landed on the helipad, snow swirling around it, but no one emerged. The rotors slowed to a stop and silence returned. I approached cautiously. The cockpit was empty. The passenger compartment was empty, yet the helicopter had clearly flown itself to this location. A tablet mounted on the control panel displayed a single message. "Proceed to coordinates 79 degrees N, 103 degrees W. Answers await." I backed away, then ran inside and locked the door. The satellite phone was dead when I tried to call out. My personal devices couldn't connect to any network. I was completely cut off. For hours, the helicopter sat on the helipad, waiting. When night fell, its exterior lights came on, illuminating the station in an eerie blue glow that matched the monitors in the control room. I spent the night huddled in my quarters, the crowbar clutched to my chest. The voices returned, now seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "We detected it first in 1983, a tired voice explained. A perfect circle of altered atmospheric conditions. The Soviets thought it was an American weapon, we thought it was theirs. What is it?" I whispered, knowing I was talking to ghosts or hallucinations or worse. "A doorway," the voice answered, as if it had heard me. "A thinning between here and elsewhere. We were sent to study it," another voice added. "All 37 of us, none came back." "You're not real," I said firmly. "This is some kind of psychological breakdown, isolation psychosis." Laughter echoed through the room. We thought the same thing at first. When morning came, I found the monitoring center fully restored. Not repaired, restored as if my rampage had never happened. Every screen, keyboard, and server was pristine, humming with power. The countdown now read 47, 12, and 5 seconds. The helicopter remained on the helipad, patient as a predator. I returned to my research, digging deeper into the history of Station 61. The official records showed it was established in 1973 as part of an international weather monitoring network. But in classified files I shouldn't have been able to access, yet somehow could, through the station's systems, I found references to Project Threshold, a joint Soviet-American initiative established after both superpowers detected an anomaly in the Arctic. The files were heavily redacted, but certain phrases jumped out: non-Euclidean properties, temporal inconsistencies, and possible extra-dimensional incursion. In 1983, a team of scientists from both nations had been dispatched to the coordinates that now haunted me. Their mission logs ended abruptly. Both governments officially abandoned the project, but Station 61 continued monitoring the anomaly remotely until its decommissioning 5 years ago, or so they claimed. The pattern on the main screen was changing, the circle developing a spiral structure that rotated slowly, hypnotically. I found myself staring at it for what felt like minutes, only to discover hours had passed. The countdown read 36, 24, and 17 seconds. That night, the temperature dropped to impossible levels. Frost formed on the inside of windows despite the heating system working overtime. I put on every layer of clothing I had and still shivered uncontrollably. The voices were clearer now, as if whatever separated them from me was growing thinner. It's a cycle, one explained. Every 40 years, the doorway attempts to open fully. What's on the other side? I asked. We went to find out. We're still finding out. Are you dead? A pause. Death implies an ending. What we experienced was more of a transformation. Into what? No answer came, but the temperature dropped further, and my breath crystallized in the air before me, tiny ice particles that hung suspended longer than they should have. I must have fallen asleep because I dreamed I was standing on an endless plain of ice beneath an alien sky where multiple suns burned different colors. Figures moved in the distance, their proportions wrong, their movements jerky and unpredictable. They noticed me and began approaching, covering impossible distances with each step. I woke gasping, my body drenched in sweat despite the cold. The countdown read 24:01 and 59 seconds, 1 day left. I decided to destroy the helicopter. If someone or something wanted me to go to those coordinates, I needed to eliminate the means. I grabbed a can of kerosene from the maintenance shed and doused the aircraft, then struck a match. The flame went out before it reached the fuel. I tried again and again. Each time, the flame died as if suffocated by some invisible force. When I returned to the station, all the doors were open. Every single one, including doors to closets and cabinets. The security cameras, which I'd never paid much attention to, were all turned to follow my movements. The countdown read 18:47 and 33 seconds. I barricaded myself in the communications room and tried every frequency, every protocol I knew to reach the outside world. Nothing worked. In desperation, I recorded a message explaining everything that had happened and set it to broadcast continuously on all emergency channels. As I finished, the equipment shut down by itself. The lights flickered, then stabilized at half their normal brightness. Through the window, I could see the helicopter's lights were now pulsing in rhythm with the spiral on the monitoring center's main screen. 12:36 and 2 seconds. The voices returned, but now they had a source, the radio equipment I'd just been using. "You don't understand what's at stake," one said, its tone almost pleading. "The doorway must be closed from both sides." "We tried from our side," another added. "We failed." "Why me?" I demanded. "I'm nobody, just a washed-up meteorologist. The station chooses its messenger. It always has, and if I refuse, then the doorway opens fully. What exists on our side comes through to yours. What exists in Potentia on your side manifests fully." "Which means what exactly?" "The end of your world as you understand it." The radio crackled with static, then fell silent. The countdown continued its relentless descent, 8:23 and 47 seconds. I tried to sleep but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that spiral, felt myself being pulled toward its center. I began to wonder if I was losing my mind, if none of this was real. Perhaps I was still in the psychiatric facility where I'd spent 3 months after my divorce, imagining this entire scenario as some kind of elaborate delusion. But the cold was real, the voices were real. The helicopter waiting patiently outside was real. 4:11 and 29 seconds. I found myself in the monitoring center without remembering how I got there. The spiral on the screen had become three-dimensional somehow, rotating in space with a depth that shouldn't have been possible on a flat display. As I watched, it seemed to reach toward me, tendrils of light extending from the screen into the physical world. The coordinates pulsed beneath it, 79 degrees N, 103 degrees W, 2:05 and 16 seconds. The station's external sensors detected a temperature drop to -70 degrees C, far colder than normal even for this region. The barometric pressure was fluctuating wildly, creating conditions that should have generated a storm of unprecedented magnitude, yet the sky remained clear, stars shining with unnatural brightness. 1:30 and 42 seconds, I made my decision. Whatever was happening, I couldn't stop it from here. My only chance, the world's only chance, if the voices were to be believed, was to go to those coordinates and see for myself. I gathered supplies, extreme weather gear, emergency rations, flares, a satellite phone, still non-functional, and the crowbar that had become my talisman of sorts. The helicopter's door opened as I approached, its engines starting automatically. 0:58 and 13 seconds. The controls operated themselves, the aircraft lifting smoothly into the night sky and turning northwest. Below me, Station 61 glowed with blue light that seemed to pulse upward into the atmosphere, creating a beacon that pierced the darkness. As we flew, I noticed other lights in the distance, similar beacons creating a pattern across the Arctic wasteland. Weather stations, research facilities, military outposts, all pulsing with the same rhythmic light, forming a vast geometric pattern with the coordinates at its center. 0:30 and 27 seconds. The helicopter's tablet displayed our approach to the target. Below, the ice sheet had changed, becoming perfectly smooth and reflective like a mirror. I could see stars reflected in its surface, but they weren't the stars above us. They were different constellations, arranged in patterns I didn't recognize. 0, 15, and 4 seconds. We reached the coordinates. The helicopter hovered over a perfect circle of what appeared to be open water, though it should have been frozen solid at these temperatures. The circle was exactly 1983 meters in diameter, 1983, the year of the first expedition. The water's surface rippled, though there was no wind. Something was moving beneath it. 0:05 and 21 seconds. The helicopter descended until it was just meters above the water's surface. The tablet displayed a new message. Threshold approaching, prepare for transition. 0:01 and 13 seconds. The voices returned, now coming through the helicopter's communication system. When you cross over, you'll understand. You'll see what we've become. What you must do, 0 and 42 seconds. Will I be able to return? I asked. That depends on whether you succeed or fail. 0 and 30 seconds. The water below began to swirl, forming a whirlpool that spun in perfect synchronization with the spiral I'd seen on the monitors. 0 and 15 seconds. I'm afraid, I admitted. So were we, the voices answered in unison. 0 and 5 seconds. The helicopter's systems shut down completely. We began to fall. 0 and 0 seconds. The water wasn't water. As we plunged into it, I felt no cold, no wetness, just a sensation of passing through a membrane, a boundary between one state of existence and another. The darkness enveloped us, then gave way to light, strange, multispectral light that revealed colors I'd never seen before. We emerged into a sky filled with those alien suns I'd dreamed of, hovering above an endless plain of reflective material that wasn't quite ice. The helicopter settled onto this surface, its engines restarting with a sound that seemed distorted, elongated. In the distance stood structures that defied physics, buildings that twisted in on themselves, towers that seemed to extend upward infinitely. And moving among them were figures both familiar and terrifyingly wrong, human in basic shape but altered, as if someone had reimagined the human form according to different laws of biology. The helicopter door opened. The tablet displayed one final message: find the control center, close the door from this side, hurry, your world's time moves differently here. I stepped out onto the surface, which felt solid despite its liquid appearance. The air was breathable but tasted metallic, and gravity seemed slightly stronger than normal, making each step an effort. One of the figures detached from the distant group and approached. As it drew nearer, I recognized the uniform of a weather station technician, though it was decades out of date. The figure's face was almost human, but the proportions were subtly wrong, eyes too far apart, jaw too angular. Marcus Wheeler, it said in a voice I recognized from the radio. We've been waiting 40 years for someone to come through. The doorway must be sealed permanently. How? I asked, struggling to look directly at the figure without feeling nauseated by its wrongness. The control center, it said, pointing to the largest structure, a spiraling tower that seemed to be composed of the same material as the ground. We'll show you. As we walked, the figure explained. This place existed in parallel to Earth, but operated according to different physical laws. The doorway between worlds had been discovered accidentally during Soviet experiments with high-energy physics. Every 40 years, the barriers between dimensions naturally thinned, creating the risk of a permanent merger, a catastrophe that would destroy both realities as they tried to reconcile incompatible laws of physics. What happened to you? I asked, to the original expedition. We crossed over like you, but we couldn't go back. The longer we stayed, the more we adapted, changed. We're neither fully human anymore nor fully. Whatever the native consciousness of this realm might be. We reached the base of the spiral tower. Inside was a vast chamber filled with technology that appeared to be a hybrid of human design and something utterly alien. Crystalline structures interfaced with what looked like 1980s-era computers, pulsing with energy that flowed like liquid light. This controls the doorway, my guide explained. It was built by those who came before us, visitors from your world who discovered this place centuries ago. They established the 40-year cycle as a safety measure, a way to ensure the doorway never stayed open too long. But the mechanism is failing. At the center of the chamber stood a column of swirling energy, a smaller version of the spiral I'd seen on the monitors. Within it floated what appeared to be ordinary objects from Earth: a pocket watch, a Soviet military cap, a weather station ID badge, a modern smartphone, artifacts from different eras, all preserved in this impossible space. Add something of yours, my guide instructed. The system requires a sacrifice, a piece of your reality to maintain the separation. I hesitated, then removed my wedding ring, the one possession I'd kept after my divorce, a reminder of mistakes and regrets. I stepped forward and placed it into the swirling energy. The spiral contracted violently, then expanded, the entire structure of the tower shuddering. Alarms sounded strange, discordant tones that hurt my ears. It's not enough, my guide said, its form shifting slightly, becoming less human. The doorway requires more. What more can I give? I asked, not what, who. Understanding dawned me. It wants me to stay like you did. Someone must maintain the boundary from this side. That was always the price. I thought of my life back on Earth, the failed career, the broken marriage, the empty apartment waiting for me after my 6-month assignment. What did I really have to return to? If I stay, the doorway closes permanently. For another 40 years, then someone else must come. The cycle continues. And if I refuse, my guide gestured toward a window-like opening in the tower wall. Outside, the sky was changing, the multiple suns aligning in a configuration that sent beams of light converging toward our location. Where the beams met, the fabric of space itself seemed to tear, revealing glimpses of Earth, Station 61, the Arctic ice, familiar stars. Then both worlds collide, neither survives intact. I approached the energy column again, understanding what I had to do. This wasn't just about my world or theirs, it was about maintaining a balance, preserving the separation between incompatible realities. Will I change like you did? Yes, but you'll remember who you were, parts of you will remain. I took a deep breath and stepped forward into the swirling energy. It enveloped me, neither hot nor cold, but intense in a way I couldn't describe, as if every atom of my being was being examined and catalogued. I felt myself stretching, changing, my consciousness expanding to encompass new dimensions of perception. I could see both worlds simultaneously, Earth continuing its rotation, oblivious to how close it had come to destruction, and this realm with its alien physics and altered humans who had once been an expedition team. The doorway contracted around me, using my presence as an anchor point, a human keystone in an interdimensional arch. The tier in space closed, the connection severed except for the thinnest of threads that ran through my transformed being. My last human thought was of Station 61, now dark and quiet, its equipment shut down permanently. In 6 months, someone would come to relieve me, only to find the facility empty, my disappearance an unsolved mystery. But I would know, and in 40 years, when the cycle came again, I would be waiting, a voice on a radio, a presence in the machines, guiding the next keeper to their destiny. Welcome to Weather Station 61. The equipment doesn't stay off for a reason, and now neither do I.